Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. I'm Isaac Zablocki, and welcome to the Israel Film Center Festival. I'm the director of the Carol Zabar Center for Film here at the JCC, and we're very excited about this panel that we've put together here tonight, and hope we're in a way taking a break from the tone of the festival, which we questioned as we were deciding whether and how to do a festival this year. We said, can we do a festival at this time and have something even with that word? And of course, felt that it was so important now more than ever, actually, to bring these stories to the public and to be sure to that Israeli films that are being actually screened less around the world have a space. But it was also important to acknowledge, of course, the space that we're in right now and talk about October 7th. And this has been something that I personally and the JCC and our entire film department and other departments here at the JCC have been very invested in the impact of October 7th and how to best manage in a time of war. And specifically, we've also been raising funds for films in Israel to make sure that stories continue to be made through our Israel Film Center Fund, which you are all welcome to support. I want to give a big shout out to Jonathan Margolis up here, who has been helping lead that way and supporting Israeli cinema in the production stage too. So we're excited to have here tonight. First of all, I'll tell you what else is going on tonight and what's coming up. I have to do my little commercials first. And I'm going to start with our film tonight. Following this panel is Checkout. You're going to meet Jonathan Dekel, the director of Checkout soon. That's sold out. Sometimes people don't show to events that they RSVP for. Any of you? No, you're all the good ones that showed up. So there might be space standby, but otherwise it's sold out. Many of our films are, I'm happy to say, selling out, but many of our gems also still have room, so please join us for those. Tomorrow night, we have Silver's Uprising, and Dan Shadur, the director, you'll meet him in a moment as well. And then Sunday, we're going to have here the amazing actress Raymond Amsalem, who is the star and the writer of Seven Blessings, Sheva Brachot, which was the biggest Israeli film of the year, and also the film The Future, which was supposed to be our opening night film of the Other Israel Film Festival. So please join us for that and more. You could grab the brochures, you've seen it all, and help spread the word. Now I'm really excited to introduce our panel of directors, all of them fresh off their flights from Israel. Luckily, they ran to shower before the event and can really share from the ground and tell us a little bit of what's going on in Israel since October 7th in the film industry. And I'm happy to invite up Adar Shafran. I'm going to take a seat. Adar Shafran. Choose your seats. Go to sit far away. That's that's the way we want it. He's the director of Running on Sand that premiered here last night. Dan Shadur. I mentioned Silver's Uprising. Jonathan Dekel, who is tonight's film Checkout, the director of Checkout. And Tchelet Semel, who is from the Israeli Consulate and runs all the Israeli film program for the Consulate. Thank you all so much for being here. I want to start by going one by one, having you maybe share a little bit about yourself, what brings you here, and maybe a little bit about how you personally have been impacted by the events of October 7th and what followed. We do have microphones here. Shall we start from the end?
Okay, hi. So I'm Adar Shafran. I am the director and producer of Running on Sand, as he said. I came here for the festival, of course. I came from Toronto, from another Jewish film festival, and it was great there too. What can I tell you? You know, the situation is very bad. I'm also the chairman of the Producer Association in Israel, so I feel it through all the directions. It's bad, in the first month or 2 months even, nobody worked at all, and then slowly it came back. And actually, I will keep on going telling you, but I think let's introduce everyone before telling every story.
Dan, you're up.
Hi, so it's nice to be here. It's nice to get away a little bit and see a different scenery. And it's nice to be here again. I'm the director of Silver's Uprising, which is showing tomorrow, and I think there's still a few tickets left. So if you haven't bought them, that's the time. There's so many layers to speaking about October 7th and how it's affecting us. Shall I start, or shall we keep on the introduction and?
I was going to start with on a personal level, and then we could get into just the general.
So on the very personal level, I spent the first 2 months abroad with my family. My wife was abroad when the war broke. I was coming from a family of refugees, and ever since this horrible Israeli government was elected, it was obvious that something bad is going to happen. So the same day, we realized that my wife can't come back. We have a 4-year-old daughter, and we just went away to family in London. The scenes at the airport were crazy. It was like Saigon in 73 or something. We spent a couple of months there. We came back. I managed to keep a distance from the war until 2 months ago, when I joined a British production for ZDF, for a German channel, a documentary series about the war. And I jumped right in, and I've been dealing with the interviewing hostages who came back, survivors of Nova, traveling to Near Oz, to the Nova site, dealing with the materials firsthand. And it's devastating. It's just, I feel a different man, and there's nothing, it really breaks you once you really, when the distance is gone. And I'm just documenting it, I'm not even experiencing it. So we can go on later.
Thank you. Jonathan.
So I'm Jonathan. I'm writer-director of Checkout, which is showing after this, after the panel. I've been personally affected pretty dramatically. I was recruited on October 7th and have been serving ever since. It's going on 9 months now. For the first time, I insisted for it not to be a combat service, and I'm dealing with intelligence. And I have to say that the first couple of days, it was I led a team that was gathering intelligence from the massacre, and we experienced the GoPro footage from the terrorists' body cams. We were the first to sift through those and extract what is later been known as the horrors video, the 40-plus video that's been going around the diplomatic circle, which I think it was rather obvious for me that I'm not going to be able to survive this. So I gave it to my editors, which don't have children, and I told them that they understand what to look for, but I'm still going through different sorts of. This has been the most vastly documented atrocity in modern history, and since there's so many images that everybody has been exposed to, we can go into that a bit later. But what I think it does to the entire, for me personally as a filmmaker, it's I am completely dried up. And I cannot even think of making fiction storytelling at this time. And I hope that will change someday.
Thank you. Tchelet.
I wasn't here, but I wasn't in Israel when October 7 happened. I was still in my old position where I was the cultural attaché for Israel in Los Angeles. And so I guess my experience is similar to a lot of the people sitting on the other side of this stage today, which is this split screen, split personality experience that has been going on since that day and up until today. So many, like a real identity crisis, I would even say. I am safe. My immediate family is safe. And this is how we need to start telling these stories, because people have been through such hell. But I think we're all experiencing something on another level that is a collective trauma. And I'm extremely thankful to you and to the center and to Carol and to Jonathan for everything that you're doing in order to create this space for us to be able to process what we're going through together, because I think it's extremely important. Also, I want to say that I am, in my position, I represent the Israeli industry in the US, and I try to create opportunities for the filmmakers in the US. I'm a professional hire, I'm not a professional diplomat, and I am not a political appointee.
Good, then you'll be honest. I want to dive right in, and we started talking about it a little bit. There's been hints already so let's start, how was the industry, the film industry specifically, impacted? Obviously, the great tragedies of October 7th and the aftermath, of a country at war are one thing, but there was also, as already noted, 2 months of just like shutdown, lockdown, and the industry was impacted from all different directions, as far as I understand. Can you share a little bit more of some of the impact that you've seen? And Tchelet, from your perspective too, what have you seen as the impact in terms of from your job?
Okay, so as I said, it was like 2 months of nothing, and everybody was in shock. And slowly we came back. Actually, from my personal point of view on the industry, the film Running on Sand was supposed to be released on October 23rd, and of course we didn't release it, and we postponed it. And then I like the first days I have a driving truck license, so in Israel you have to have that. And so I was going to the north and to the south, bringing soldiers stuff. And then I thought, after like 1 week, I thought, okay, what can I bring to the table that is mine, like something special, because there are a lot of drivers. And then I thought, well, I have the film ready, and I can't do anything with it, and nobody knew what will happen in the future. We didn't even think about releasing. It's my first feature film as a director, and I really wanted to show it to the world, but I can't right now. So what I did is I went to all the evacuees in the hotels in Israel, from Eilat in the south to the north, and I just screened my film for free, of course, for all the evacuees. They needed some escapism, and so this is what I did. I did 45 screenings through all out Israel, and this was the premiere of the film, actually. And one screening was, I remember it was 3 weeks after October 7th, and I did it in En Gedi to evacuees from Be'eri, which they suffered really bad. And I was really scared before the screening, but then we screened the film, and I stayed with them together and talked after it. And they told me it's the first time that they didn't think about anything. They didn't think about the news. They didn't think about what happened. They just enjoyed the film and got into it. And actually, this is when I decided to release the film on December 7th, which is 2 months after. During the war, nothing. I was the first film that was released in Israel after the war. and it was scary because I invested so much in the film, and who knew who will come to the cinema right now? But I understood it when I screened the film to Be'eri evacuees that people need it. They need to get away. In Israel, it's like, especially in the first 2 or 3 months, also now, but in the first 2 or 3 months, it was like all news. You didn't get anything but the news. Everybody was in the news, so they needed the Israeli audience needed to run away in some way, and I gave it to them. And a lot of people came. Actually, almost 200,000, which is a lot, even not during war in Israel. So this is my experience with the film and with the industry. I can talk a lot because I deal with a lot of things that happened to the Israeli industry, because we also in Israel, we came back and we're now working and shooting, and it's pretty okay. But outside of Israel, it's really, really hard because even my film, I have a sales agent, like a world sales agent, and he told me, I met him in February in Berlin, and he told me, listen, nobody wants to deal with Israeli films right now. It's really hard to sell to any territory. It's not easy because it's a Hebrew film. It's not easy to sell it anyway, but after the war, nobody wants to talk about it even it doesn't have anything to do with the situation, but nobody wants it. And in festivals all over the world, it's really hard to get in because of this. We are kind of banned. It's like we're like Russia in the world. We're like Russia, but not like officially. So it's really hard situation, and we are trying to think how to solve it and what to do. But it's really hard. I hope we will get it somehow.
Gidi Dar, who is our director from opening night, he was supposed to be on this panel, but unfortunately he's not feeling well. And he had mentioned, he said that Israel was a favorite of the film festivals and of the international scene, and everything that Israel was creating, America was making a new American version of that series and looking at it very seriously. And then suddenly, after October 7th, there's been this silence on the international level. Anybody want to share a little bit on that international, what's happening in the international scene?
First of all, in terms of the productions in Israel, so I think what Adar is talking about is mainly the fiction aspect. So a lot of the production halted, but in many ways for documentarists, it was the opposite, because there was like a big war industry happening and a lot of networks coming in from the outside. So a lot of DOPs and producers and a lot of people worked very hard, still working around the topics of October 7th. And the broadcasters in Israel shifted a lot of their budgets to topics that are dealing with the war. So at least for the documentary industry, it kept on working all the time. But in terms of co-productions, and myself, my films were always co-productions. I needed it for exposure, and I needed it to get a decent budget, because there's only so much money you can raise inside Israel. And if you have a bigger budget, and if you want to make animation or use expensive archival footage or just invest in your film, you need the co-productions. And now it seems almost impossible. And it started before, actually, at least with the festivals. It's not a new thing. We know that Sundance, IDFA, which is the biggest documentary festival, and the other, you look at the programs for the last decade or so, you only see specific Israeli films that are very, very critical, and just nice personal stories, or it's absent from many festivals. So this started before, and it's definitely got much worse since the war. In the sense that even people who are not critical of Israel or even pro-Israel, they're taking a step back, because why should they deal with this thing? So it's a problem, and it's affecting us in a way that we have to rethink about our productions, and we have to rethink about our topics.
Tchelet, you picked up the microphone, and I think you
I
might have
did.
some
Yeah,
things to say.
Dan said most of what I wanted to say, honestly, because it's true. I would divide it to a few different aspects. So there is film and there is television. Film and the art world and festival world, we have seen this decline in Israeli participants, and exactly as Dan mentioned, it's very specific topics, very specific stories that were picked up by festivals, and it's been like that for the last decade or so. In my position, I formed this. We shifted our efforts towards television because no one was answering our calls for film, anyways. So we started focusing on television. Television was easier. And there was great success, and it was like, a lot of people talk about there's a sensation of a perfect storm that happened, and I think it has to do with this as well, because there's what's going on in the global industry, that there was this peak for international content in general, and Israel was in the forefront because Israel was already in that field before global streaming started, before the people started to being open to international language, to foreign language content. So Israel was there with Israeli content since in treatment and with remakes and such, and then there was Shtisel and Fauda, and it felt like this is really, Israel is punching above its weight, and it's happening, and we had this event, we formed Scripted Israel. Adar is our partner on that. That is a strategic initiative that is aimed to help promote the Israeli TV scripted industry in the U.S. industry. We bring over 50 of Israel's top producers and writers to Los Angeles and create all sorts of interactions between them and the American industry in order to create co-productions. The reason why we need the co-productions is that because of global streaming, local broadcasters have lost their power, and that is happening all over the world. This is not specific to Israel, because people buy their Netflix subscription, and they don't subscribe to local companies like Hot or Yes that are the cable companies in Israel. So these broadcasters have less money, they have less revenue, and they have less money to invest in original content. And that is why we need the money from abroad to complete the budget. So that's why we were really focused on co-productions. Now, what is happening in the industry at large, not only, again, it's not just the Israeli story, it's not just the fact that we became leopards, it's more than that. We've seen the strike, and we've seen freezing of all those, like the moment of international content and the boom of streamers. Now we're seeing consolidation. We're seeing a lot less risk. We're seeing a lot of these different streamers are buying one another. A lot of people are losing their jobs. So that appetite for international content is diminished. And on top of that, there is the fact that who wants to deal with that if you cannot? If you're not connected to this extremely hot topic right now, why should you? And we can see that in different aspects as well. I mean, we see this. That's why I'm so thankful to you for programming it, because it's gutsy to program Israeli content right now, because you've seen demonstrations outside of institutions, Jewish institutions, the 92nd Y here, the Jewish Museum. God, yeah, I know.
Don't let them know.
So I understand.
Give them any ideas.
No, I know. I'm kind of surprised. But yeah, so I'm saying I understand why would people want to engage. And I can tell you an anecdote, a sad story from the past week for me. And we were working on the second edition of Scripted Israel, and I think it's really important to do that and to make a mark in the industry's calendar, a week where they have to pay attention to Israeli content and to Israeli creators. But we've had our partners. We've had a fantastic partnership, and I'm not going to name names because these are big names. But we've had fantastic partnerships with all of the big companies in Hollywood. And I'm talking to one of our partners. On a personal level, everybody's friend, everybody loves us. But when it comes to brands, Israel is a problematic brand. Now, Scripted Israel was funded by the Foreign Ministry on its first edition, and that was historical, but this is no longer the case, and we took it outside, and we have philanthropic partners that are supporting us because we wanted it to be more accessible. We didn't want people to say, oh, we don't want to do business with the Israeli government, and then the artists suffer. So we went out and we found funding, and this partner tells us, I'm sorry, we can't do anything with you this year, and you know how much I love you, and you know how much I care, but my board is not going to approve it. And I said, well, but we're not funded by the government, and also that half of our delegation is actually Palestinian identifying Israelis, and we're all about, and I start reselling him the project, and he says, it's just the word. That word, people go nuts when they hear it.
Well, I have a lot more to add to all of this. I first of all want to start from the beginning and say that that yes, there has been a Israeli cinema, as somebody who follows it very closely. Israeli cinema has been less represented throughout the last decade in international film festivals. Some might say it's political. Some might say it's artistic. It's also Israeli artists have been moving more towards television, and there's. Maybe some of the top artists are not want to make some money, so they're working with television. But what's going on this year to follow it? This is the first year that Sundance really did not have any Israeli films. Cannes did not have any Israeli feature films. Tribeca added one later on, added tonight's film, but it wasn't in their original, which. All might be the reasoning for all of these are festivals that always had Israeli cinema. By the way, we could look back before October 7th. Toronto usually had 11 Israeli films. They had like 1 or 2 this year.
I wonder if they announced it late to keep the focus out.
So that is one of the theories, is that it's not that these festivals are actually boycotting or divesting from Israel, but it's actually that they are like, let's not cause trouble, because, and this goes back to what you were saying, because of the word, which seems to be limiting at times and causing reactions. I will say, I'll say this here, it hasn't been, that for what we're doing here in our Israel, this is, I know we had a pandemic, but it's our most successful year to date. There is an audience that wants to see Israeli cinema and that's not afraid of the word. Jonathan, I want to make you a part of this too and just see if, in terms of the impacts that you've seen on Israeli production, if you wanted to share anything.
I'm not sure I have interesting feedback regarding production. I'll just say that, in a way, being the primary, as creators, we are suffering from the boycott. In a way, I'll just add that I think that this possibly will go away. It might be naive, but I think once this very racist and populist government will, if the people can topple it and we can move onwards, I think it's very possible for the pendulum to start swinging the other way. I'm not sure about the international front. I think Adar and Tchelet know more about that right now because I've been out of the loop for the last 9 months. But I will say that domestically there's terrible things happening as well. The Minister of Culture, Miki Zohar, is also advancing a very destructive reform currently in Israel, which is giving precedence to, I'd say, commercial film. That's the way he will say it. My film, at least, I think Adar's as well, was supported by a fund, by a national fund that is soft money that is crucial for any production. And this will make creators steer away from political content if they want to get government funding. It's a populist move. It will definitely affect the way cinema is going to, the productions are going to happen, and it's not going to help us on the international front because commercial movies that do well domestically, I think usually correlates with films that usually appeal less to the international festival circuit. So this is a perfect storm. And I do, the only thing that's left for me is to go back and try to take to the streets. And during the day, I'm a soldier, but during the evenings, the streets are getting more and more filled with people. And I hope that we are up for this moment.
I have to pause on this beautiful image of what goes on in Israel in terms of that you can be a soldier during the day fighting for your country and in the evening protesting that same country, that same government. Dan, you were going to say something.
Yeah, it's beautiful, but it's a trap. Because everything Jonathan said is very true, but it makes it very difficult to protest, because at the end of the day, he's a soldier. A lot of people are soldiers or have soldiers. So there's only, how far can you go with it? And we as filmmakers, most of us feel trapped because, in a way, the world is against us and our government is against us. I mean, it's not only the Minister of Culture; it's the Minister of Communication, who hates culture, who hates communication, who doesn't watch TV. So everything this government does is to attack its own creators and cultural representatives. So it's a problem. And when we're talking about our situation in the world, of course, part of it is anti-Semitism. A lot of it is hypocrisy. And I've been witnessing it closely on social media with people from the filmmakers community. And you see the way they talk about Israel, the way they talk about Zionism, people who just saw a post or saw one documentary feel that they can comment on 1948 and everything that happened. So it's very annoying. But on the other hand, this government with all these really racist elements is giving all the excuses they need to for this stream of hate. So if this government doesn't go away, we really don't stand a chance on any front.
So let me ask you, are there filmmakers who are making critical films right now? Are there filmmakers who are using their art to really, at this moment, when, we all have to be unified and we all have to, stay with the party line, are people actually standing up to that?
It's very difficult. I just, like last year in Doc Aviv, there was a documentary about Doc Aviv is the documentary festival in Tel Aviv, and actually, just like you said that you have a good turnout now, there was just a festival now in Tel Aviv, and there was a lot of fears about how to make it, and it was beautiful, and it was packed, and it was very successful as well. So people are really looking for culture and looking for stories on the screen. But a film that was there last year about 1948 was supposed to be on Cannes 11 on the national broadcasters, and they keep postponing it. A film that won an award this year about the Kfar Qassem massacre in 1956, a very powerful and important film, supposed to go on Yes Docu, and they don't have the feeling is that the broadcasters are afraid now to touch sensitive material, and it's hard to see filmmakers picking up on these topics now because you work so hard and for so long to make a film. So why should you pick on a film that will never broadcast? So it's a problem now.
Anyone else want to add to that? The positive work that's being done. You've mentioned here somewhere, I forget who, that a lot of filmmakers went right to work right after October 7th to kind of capture, keep things going, edit, whatever it would be. Can you share some examples of some of the work that's emerged out of October 7th?
Yeah, it's mostly documentary, so you should answer.
No, actually, I heard about one fiction film that is, I don't know if it's if he wants us to talk about it, but it's an Israeli director who went I think he shot in November, in Nir Oz or Nachal Oz in one of the kibbutzim, and he made like a semi-fiction film. He created a fictional story
Like,
on the background of the actual sites of the massacre, and I haven't seen it, but I heard it's very powerful. So he found a way to do like a semi-documentary. And there's many documentaries that are now in work. Some already, again, Cannes, the national broadcasters, they're very active. They have the resources. I think there are 4 or 5 documentaries about the Nova Film Festival. 2 already out. Another one in the process. Many films about different families in Be'eri. Things that have come out already and things that are in production. For me personally, so if I had a series before October 7th about like a docu-crime series that I was eager to make, now I don't know, like I don't really understand the relevance. But another fiction project I was developing before and forgot about 1948 now feels super important and super relevant. So I went back to work on this. So yeah, things shift.
I want to add to that. There was a call for entries by one of Israel's funds days after October 7th. Because again, in Israel, most films are being funded by funds, and they are public. The money comes from the government at the end of the day most of the time. It's not like here in the U.S. where projects are funded privately, and that's an important difference to remember. And one of those funds released immediately a call for entries for just development to go out and shoot for documentaries. That's the new Israeli Fund for Cinema and Television. And they thought they would get 2-3 submissions because it was days after and everybody was shocked, and they received over 130 submissions. And I think they gave to 38. It's not a lot of money. It was just like to start seed money. And we recently did, again, like trying to help. So we did this Zoom session where we invited people of interest who may be able to invest, who may be able to do a pre-sale, who may be able to help with distribution of these films, because the situation is that these are really very diverse projects. We selected 6 projects that I believe have some sort of international potential. One of them is about the Thai agriculture workers in one of the kibbutzim. They were butchered. It's just really unbelievable what happened there. And it tells their story. It's a documentarist that followed them for a long time, but then that happened. And one story is about an Argentinian family who escaped dictatorship in their own country to come to Israel. They're so, they felt like Israel is their home, and then with everything that was going on with the government, with the recent government, they felt there is, they felt fear that Israel will become a dictatorship, and then October 7 happens. So it's like and then there's a story of rebuilding of Kfar Aza, which is one of the kibbutzim, and it's this family that lost 5 members of their family, including their son, and they're just trying to pick up the pieces and to rebuild the kibbutz, and they're debating whether to go back there or to build it somewhere else, and whether they're betraying the next generation by telling them that it's safe to be there. Maybe whether they have betrayed their children by raising them there, things like that. It's interesting. However, all of these projects can't reach the finish line in terms of funding because of what I just said before. So we don't know where they're going to go. We don't know who's going to show them.
So before I open this to questions from the audience, and I want to make you a part of this conversation too, I'll just add to this that there's the what's called the main Israeli Fund, the Foundation for Israeli Cinema, the Israel Film Fund, is they actually did an international call where they presented 4 projects by major Israeli filmmakers to get support from around the world to get these films made, which, by the way, brings up a whole other question of the question of making fiction film now and how that reflects at this point of with October 7th. And the new foundation, of course, has also done a lot of calls, as have other funds, and there's a lot of documentary work being made, which is fantastic. The funds also got together to actually have the families that have family members who are hostages. They actually used filmmakers, not just reporters from the news, but actual filmmakers to cover these stories and to help with the whole campaign to bring back the hostages. So there's a lot of great work being done. I'm proud to say that we've also tried to support these in many ways and are trying to get all these projects that we're mentioning here on their way and across the finish line. And then there's the question of getting them shown. I mean, it's so funny. I get, every news article, they say to me, show it at the JCC. This needs to be shown here. This is a movie. And it's like amazing, unbelievable stories. And there are so many fabulous stories to be told, but important stories to be told. But of course, also, there's that cinematic element, the production of Israeli films that we've seen rise over the last 20 years or so. That we really want to make sure that the artistic side of it all also stays alive. So with that, I'm happy to take some questions from the audience. We're going to pass the microphone around. Caroline here will help out.
What impact has all of us had on the film schools and young people who want to go into filmmaking?
It's hard to say, I think, at this point, but I think this adds to another. I think the biggest obstacle right now is the word film, because the thing that's being, I feel, completely ravaged right now, regardless of the war, is our attention span. I'm not sure how many of you survived the last 45 minutes without looking at your phones. But basically, I feel the entire 90-minute storytelling piece is under complete assault. And that goes into what Tchelet was talking about, how all the money and attention is going to TV. A lot of us would prefer, at the end of the day, especially with all the news that's outside, a lot of us will easier for us to go and binge 3 or 4 movies straight, episodes, 3 to 4 episodes straight, which can be two feature films as far as length, but it's harder to press play on a 90-minute, let alone 120 or 180-minute feature film, as far as pacing, as far as attention spans. I see it on my children. So it's a great question about how many people actually go to film school. I think my school, Sem Spiegel in Jerusalem, recently changed their name to Film and TV or something to that effect. So I think content will always be needed in a way, but something bigger than the war. On the one side, people, I think, have more stories they want to tell and put on the screen, but the word film is even harder to stomach than the word Israel, I feel.
I've been actually teaching this year a class in Minshar, which is an art school in Tel Aviv, and I'm teaching a documentary class, and they're great. They're talented, they're creative, they're not, I expected them to try and touch upon the present more and look for, touch stories regarding the war, and they're avoiding it, which is probably wise. And there are a lot of questions about the future of cinema and the future of documentaries and how you work with it, and we talk about it a lot.
But this is regardless the war, it's like...
Yeah. So.
I find that the film students often make their films based on some of their own psychological trauma, and they might be in a place where they have more material now, and sadly, and can explore further. We have a question up here.
Unfortunately, the director of the Legends of Destruction was temporarily destroyed. I hope he's feeling better. But my question is, the opening night film that we saw was 2 hours. It was a feature. And can you tell us how it's been received in Israel?
Legend of Destruction?
Yeah.
That's more a question for Giddy, who's not here, the director, but that was released. We saw actually the premiere of the English version, and the Hebrew version was released a couple of years ago, and
it did very well.
It did very well. It did very well, and what was interesting is, of course, he was able to get the Orthodox audience to come see this film, which sometimes is an audience that won't see every Israeli film. Though I heard they complained because they weren't wearing kippot in the film, and this was a film about. It's a animated. It's a painted film, all made in pictures from about the Roman period when kippot probably did not exist. Definitely not in the same way that it is today. He said it was also very successful. I mean, just like anywhere else. Not only was it. Did it have a theatrical release, but also had a virtual release, and did very well on the like pay-per-view channels, and people clicked a lot and watched this film. So definitely, people are seeing Israeli cinema in Israel. Would you say?
Yeah, I would say actually yesterday was like a day. There's every year 2 days of Israeli cinema that you go to. The Israeli films for 10 shekels, which is bring a lot of people to the cinemas, and people are still going. For
10 shekels, they'll go. Otherwise, they wouldn't see
for
Israeli.
sure. No, I think people will there is changes, of course, in the screen. Yes, we have Netflix, and we have everything at our home, and some big screens also at home. But I think what I believe, I believe a little bit different than what you think. I believe that cinema will always be something. It needs to change because you need to look at it differently. It's more of a not having the content, but more going to an evening with your wife or your kids and to enjoy, and specifically with the phones, it's the only time that people don't look at the phone. So people want it, and I think they will want it more and more because it's driving us crazy. And I think that yes, it needs a little changes, but it will stay. And the collective watching is still, people like it. And when they go, sometimes it's hard to go, but when they go, they really enjoy it and say, "Why we should go more," So
Movies are better together is what we've been saying here, and as a community center, it's really part of the experience here. It's not just about entertainment; it's about actually that communal experience that we hope stays alive. It reminds me actually that when we were screening here earlier this year in early November, we screened Seven Blessings, Sheva Brachot, which we're screening here again this week as part of the festival, and we also showed Gan HaKofim, The Monkey House by Avi Nesher. Both films were basically. They said the films were killed by October 7th, and they were about to be released or in their release, and then kind of the theaters shut down and nobody was going to movies. And when they came and saw it here with an audience for the first time, they said both had commented how we brought these films back to life. And how this is something that was missing for them for over a month. You really hadn't seen life, and finally they were seeing that here. And it's just so important to come out and support these films at this time especially. We have a question up on top.
Hands raised. Sorry. So, as a filmmaker, I graduated from Tisch School of the Arts. It's a fairly good school, and in the '90s, at the time when I started working, there was a burst out of independent cinema, whereas somebody could have the final cut as a director. You couldn't have it as a screenwriter, which is the way I started, but as a director you could, which is something that you can't always have in the Hollywood Code. You have to. There, you can't maybe make that decision. And I don't know enough about, I have been to Tel Aviv and I lived in Jerusalem, but it seems like it's very free there, certainly in Tel Aviv, great amounts, vast amounts of freedom for the people. What about the government? When you said that the government has a lot to say about the movies that are made, and is there censorship? Like I saw this film recently at the Film Forum, Terrestrial Versus, and it's a film from Iran. And the person that was peddling this film to the studios, the government basically, he cut out 40 pages of his script because he was told that he couldn't have mentioned that the father was killed by the mother. So basically he had like 100 scenes that were cut out, and basically he had no more film, no real substantive content for that film. In Israel,
We
how does
got
it
it.
work?
We got it. Let's. Adar's excited to answer. Thank you.
Excited. I can tell you right now, there is no censorship in Israel at all. We have a cinema law, and this is why we have funds that are not connected politically to the government. They are free to do what they want. Now, the Minister of Culture is trying to change it and trying to push his things through a reform that he thinks that will help.
Reform will affect censorship as well?
It will, yes, okay. because
Financial censorship.
Yeah, it's like he's doing it in another way, but we will not let it happen, of course. I mean, I'm sitting there in the meetings with him, fighting for it, so no worries. I can tell you that.
But I am going to challenge that, a couple of years ago, one of the major funds, the Rabinovich Fund in Israel, followed the government's request to make filmmakers sign an oath of allegiance.
Yeah,
That
but
didn't end up happening.
It's not exactly. It was out of proportion. This thing, it's still.
And there was a strong response against it. There was very little submission to one period to this fund, and then they reversed it.
Yeah, but it's I listen. Right now, there's no censorship, and nobody tells you what to do, and it's free.
But like always, it's a lot about inner censorship. It's a lot about the topics we pick. It's a lot about how far we take it, thinking about the audiences, thinking about what you can do with your film. So I think this is the crucial element. And this exists. It always exists, and I think it exists now more than before.
Yeah, I think the argument of the other side, the censors, has also to do with that, because they think that for the longest time Israeli filmmakers were criticizing Israel deliberately in order to get into the festivals, because otherwise the festival has no interest in other stories. So
that's not completely wrong.
Not
as well.
completely wrong. Yeah, and it's just important to say Israel is not Iran yet. Israel is a democracy. So. Yeah.
I am going to say, even though this is all true, that this conversation has completely changed since October 7th. I remember just before October 7th being there was a campaign going on that Israel felt that there was self-censorship for the filmmakers. Filmmakers were getting in trouble because they weren't putting I think it was, I'm remembering, the Arab filmmakers that wanted to remove Israel from the names of the films, as they said, as the country of origin. And a lot of controversy around it, to a point where a lot of filmmakers were speaking out, saying that the government is controlling what's being said, and the films are not being made with the freedom that they should. But I'm glad to hear that now there's a tone of saying things aren't that
Everything
bad.
changed. The conversation changed because we've changed. I think all of us, and the way we look at things have changed.
Well, I've discovered a new change since October 7th, which I didn't have coming into this panel. So I want to thank all of you for being here and for sharing. I want to thank you guys for being a part of it, listening and asking your questions so politely. We do have our screening here at 7 o'clock. You want to tell us about the film a little bit, Jonathan?
Sure, it's a dark Mossad comedy, loosely based on stuff me and my co-writer went through. You're more than welcome to join. It is kind of deals with the hubris of the Israeli defense mechanism, very tongue-in-cheek. It's due for distribution in the fall, November. In Israel, and fingers crossed for world sales eventually. But I think it's going to. I mean, it's be interesting to see. It was written pre October 7th. But bears a lot of it's an homage in a way to the way things gotten to the way they've gotten. So you feel free to join. I'm sure there'll be a few seats open, even though it's sold out.
Don, don't put your microphone down yet. Tell us about your film tomorrow night.
Silver's Uprising, it's a story of a documentary about a guy who comes from an Orthodox family in Tzfat, becomes a leading activist leaves religion, becomes a leading activist for cannabis, and forms an app called Telegrass, which becomes the biggest drug selling application in Israel. He becomes the target of a global manhunt, and eventually is the center of the biggest cyber trial in the history of Israel. It's a story about the rule of law versus the rule of God and other elements of Israeli society now, and it's fun. And come see it.
Did he say it was a documentary? It's a documentary. It's unbelievable. Thank you, folks. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very
much.
much.
Other films. Spread the word. We're only here 1 week, and